Hi, welcome to Preps Plus Podcast, episode 55. I'm Josh Hart, sports editor here at the Daily News. I'm here with Preps reporter Jason Leskew. We are at the final week of the regular season already, and playoffs are right around the corner. So we'll talk some playoffs. We'll also talk about a little bit of the two new things that WI implemented on the classification front. And so we'll briefly touch on those, and then at the end of the podcast, we have an interview with Castle Rock 160-pound defending wrestling champion Wayne Baker as he begins his quest to repeat as state champion this weekend at Sub-District. So that's all we got going for you. We'll start off with that classification thing. So there's basically two things. One is that free and reduced lunch is now factored into the equation as Oregon has done. So for those familiar with the Oregon system, they also factor it in, and it's very similar way the WIA is going to do. Any 1% you're over the state average, you can reduce that as part of your enrollment. So for example, and this only applies to 1A through 4A teams. So that's it only touches 5 of our teams, but the highest, based on 2017 data, the highest one that's affected is RA Long with 10%. It still would not be enough to drop them down in classification. Right. But what are your thoughts on this? Because obviously it's going to affect some teams in the state. For our area, right now it appears to have minimal effect. Now that could change in the future, right. And change based on data. But right now, for the most part, it seems very minimal.
I feel like the WIA, which, by the way, who knows what will happen a couple of years from now, because they seem to be several years behind Oregon and every other system. Although Oregon still doesn't have a shot clock, but that's another story. The big thing to me that I feel like they missed on with this is making an adjustment for private schools. Like you said, nobody's really going to be affected in our area. And there's definitely an economic correlation between athletic performance, school performance, and so on. But my big thought is this was an opportunity for them to really have a discussion about, hey, you have schools that can recruit, and there's two to lake.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with you a little bit on that front, because I think by factoring in free and reduced lunch, you're taking in the private schools into consideration, because predominantly your private schools are going to have a much lower percentage of free and reduced lunch, whereas your more rural cities are going to have higher. The point that I liked that Tim Martinez down at the Columbian made was it's a statewide average. And free and reduced lunch, I believe, is factored in. There's a certain rate, that is factored in statewide. Right. Well, that means that the same schools on the east side, they could have, the same percentage as a team in, let's say, rural or Seattle, right? Just suburbs of Seattle. Well, the Seattle kids are paying a much higher cost of living.
Sure.
So that's the point I found kind of interesting that I hadn't thought about. Was that there's certainly an imbalance in the cost of living in the state as far as the west and east side, and is that going to create an imbalance in how this affects and impacts teams because it's based on a state average?
Yes.
And so that's what I found kind of interesting. I kind of disagree on the private school front, because my thing is who have been the biggest culprits of alleged recruiting over the last 10 years? It's been the Metro League, boys basketball,
where it's allowed.
It's a completely, and all those are public schools, so it's a completely. You can transfer to any school in Seattle any year you wish.
Right.
That's just part of their thing. And Bellevue football, also a public school. So that's my thing is like. Down at the 2B and 1A level, you see private schools succeed, I think, in more part, not because they have a larger base to draw from, but because there's more funds going in. Yeah. Linden and Linden Christian do not bring in athletes, or let's take Linden Christian since we're talking private, do not bring in athletes from around Whatcom County, but they do have money to go send their kid to camps and
Yes.
all sorts of those things. They also drink a lot of milk, and their kids grow real tall.
They do something to get their kids growing. I don't know if it's some Scott's product or. This seems like a discussion for another that might be interesting to have on another podcast too. So, by the way, send in if you have some comments. Please let us know.
Yeah. So that's one part of the classification. The other part of the classification thing is having a set classification. So if you're between 0 and 105, you're a 1B. If you're between 105 and 225, you're a 2B, etc. I looked at the numbers. Most of our schools wouldn't have been currently affected by the last classification cycle outside of Wahkiakum, which would, based on their enrollment numbers last time, would have been a 1B school. Now, the reason I don't think this really affects our area schools is because Wahkiakum, 99% chance they would opt up anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't think it would impact our local schools as much. But it is an interesting thing because the argument was it's really hard for ADs to gauge, okay, where are we going to be at this moving line to make sure all classifications are equal? Where are we going to be at? Well, now it just places all that work on the front end of it, right, with the WIA of what should we set these classifications at so that we have a somewhat balanced system, right? You know, it's like trying to gauge, okay, what should these numbers be versus let's gauge them as it progresses. Now, I understand it's very difficult for ADs to find leagues and all those things when they're, I just bumped down to a 2B or we just got moved up to a 2A. I understand that difficulty, but to me, that set classification thing, I don't want to see a 24-team state tournament in one bracket and a 12-team in the other. I get that there's an equal opportunity, but I think you're taking away opportunities that way, not adding them. You know what I mean? Like, there's only 4 or 5 good teams in each sport per year.
And not to mention, I mean, the state tournaments are so complex that you need a governing body that really only does, manages those. So
yeah, so I don't know. That was the more worrying thing for me. I understand the reasoning behind it. It makes life a lot easier for ADs around the state. Yeah. But I still think the work has to be done to make sure classifications are somewhat equal, so we don't end up with at the 3A level 20 teams get in, and at the 2B level only 12 teams get in, because you're taking away 4 opportunities from 2B schools in theory.
Right.
I don't know. I don't like it. That was the one I didn't like.
Right.
I think the other one is a fine amendment.
Well, and it seems like you're not alone in that. I haven't made up my mind, but I know that there's a lot of people who.
Right. So on to playoffs. Let's start with Kelso, because Shaw Anderson has had 2 48-point nights in the last 3 games, and Kelso just won its first outright league title in 26 years. How deep can this team go? Let's start with bi-districts. Is this a team that can repeat as bi-district champions?
Can they? Yeah. But the thing I wondered, and it's like we saw last night, Shaw Anderson, 48 points, and nobody else in double figures, and that's kind of a problem when you step into the postseason. To me, now teams have tried to key in on Shaw unsuccessfully, obviously. But I think when you get to that next level of competition, there's could be a problem. Now they obviously have shooters. Riley Noah can shoot. Jaden Hardiman can shoot. We've seen Josh Webb have really good nights. So there's other guys, but you kind of look at it and say, well, okay, nobody stopped him, but there's that yet part that comes with that. And so,
yeah, I actually kind of on the inverse of you on this is Shaw Anderson's 48-point nights tell me that he's going to take over. And the only flaw I've seen in his game the last 2 years is that sometimes he can be too deferential. He's such an unselfish teammate that sometimes he can defer a little bit too much. And I think he can take on double teams for the most part and still score buckets. Mm-hmm. So I think the last week or so of him just taking over games, I think is a really good sign for Kelso, because I think it basically tells me, like, in his mind, he's not going to be stopped.
Right.
And his teammates are more than willing to hand him the ball every play and let him go to work. Because that's your best offense right there.
Yeah, it's a winning formula for sure.
Right. Now, if he gets some big post players down in the thing, it'll be interesting to see, how much he's grown as a perimeter player and as a passer, which I think has been a lot. And I think that'll get some other guys opportunities. I like him. There's some tough teams in that district, though, so We'll see. Mark Morris. What's there? I mean, this district is interesting because outside of Columbia River, right? Nobody looks like world beaters, right? You got Black Hills, WF West, Aberdeen, Tumwater are all solid teams. Hawkinson and Ridgefield, especially with Brammer back, have the potential to be good. But nobody outside of River looks like world beaters. And currently, I have Mark Morris back at St. Martin's University on Friday, February 15th, playing in a district title game.
You do?
I do. I'm looking at the bracket, and I think they beat WF West. Now, I'll have to check if that, because I think WF West and Tumwater played last night or tonight, and so the seeding might be different. But right now, based on when I kind of projected things out that other night, where teams would finish and everything, I've got Mark Morris in the district title game.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think of last year. I think it was during the winter break, and they were in Yakima at the tournament, and I tweeted out something about Foss is just by far a superior team, and so on and so forth. Well, then Mark Morris beats Foss at State. The roster retweets it. That was a good little punch. I don't know if they had it pinned on the wall, or something, but knowing Coach Backus, I'm sure they did. You never know what you're going to get with those guys. I mean, you can have in a good way. The improvement from December to February, March has always been there. So to me, it's kind of a who knows situation.
Right. And I think Brewery, as long as he stays out of foul trouble, right. I think he's a talented enough post player, and you can see it in the last couple games he's played. He's had some big nights. He's a talented enough post player. It's going to give guys problems, and if he's on the court, they have enough weapons out there that can really make things happen. And I think Dawson Fritz, he's one of those guys. I think you put him in a big game, and he's gonna do big things.
He's had a really good season.
Yeah, he's been really good this year, and he's like one of those guys like Backus,
stepped up.
Backus type of guy that a coach's dream basically. The 2B boys is gonna be really freaking interesting. You did a story about the whole classification, but let's look at this 2B boys. You got let's just take the top 4 seeds. You got Toledo, Toutle, Willapa Valley, Life Christian.
Yeah.
Beyond that, you have Adna, Kalama, Northwest Christian, Owaka, Winlock's known to upset people.
Yes.
You saw Toledo the other night. Are they the favorite to win this thing? Is it Life Christian? Can Toutle Lake make another deep run like they did last year?
Yes, no, and yes. Toledo and Toutle Lake, that game the other night was a really good first half. And I think it showed just how close those two teams are. Toledo won by like 25 points or something like that. It was a big win, but it wasn't. That was more of a happenstance thing. Toutle can fix that. Toledo is the favorite, and having that first round bye is the first 2 rounds effectively bye. Makes it you win one game, you're in state, you don't have that pressure on your shoulders, and you can just play basketball, and I think that'll be a big help. So, yeah, I think they're the favorite.
Right.
But Toutle Lake should give everybody a real
Yeah, I think there's 6 spots available to regionals, and I think there's 9 teams that in most districts would probably be deserving. But currently, I think Life Christian wins it. I think they have the most talent top to bottom of any team in this district. Toledo I like because they're really strong defensively. They're going to get up in your grill and they're gonna force you to make mistakes. But I often look at who has the best player once you get into the postseason, who can take over a game. And Toledo, they have some really good players. Fano, Andreas. They have guys that are really good players, but I don't see. I can see Andreas getting super hot and dropping 26 in a game. Right. But as far as just taking over from start to finish, I think the guy you have to look at in this tournament is Mike Adams. Now, he hasn't had as spectacular a season as I thought he did because teams have keyed in on him so hard. But he's the type of guy that can just take over a game. And that's why I like Tudor Lake a lot. Now, I think they'll, as long as they beat Kalama tonight, I think they'll be on the same side as Life Christian, which is the problem. But I like Tudor Lake a lot. The team that's most interesting to me is Kalama.
Yeah.
Because they have so many dudes who can score, but maybe not one guy who can just dominate.
Right.
They have it in spells, like Jackson Essery the other night, Alex Dyer for a little bit. They have certain guys that could, but I just think there's maybe too many options there.
Yeah.
But defensively, Kalama, because of how long and athletic they are, Kalama's my pick as the best defensive team in the district, and that can often surprise some teams.
Yeah, and athletic ability transfers.
Right.
And so they're going to be a tough opponent for anybody, and I think they should make it to state.
Right. Yeah, especially if Kalama wins against Tootle tonight and gets that second seed. That'd be an impressive turnaround from last season because it's the same bunch of guys, more or less.
Right.
And you could tell that football hangover got to him last year. And just that new voice, that fresh voice of Wes Armstrong. And I think Jody Stemkowski was a great coach. But, coaches will say that sometimes you need that voice telling, a different voice telling you what to do.
Right.
And Wes Armstrong has done a fantastic job with that group. And if they were to get the second seed, that'd be really, really impressive. It is cool. Wakayakum boys get to host a playoff game, so that's impressive for them too. Just as kind of a side note there. Let's see if there's any other interesting ones. Not really. The 2B girls, Wakayakum win it.
Yes.
Yeah, the girls is.
I would bet my retirement account on that.
The girls is a little bit less interesting for our locals. You have the Wakayakum girls are gonna roll through, and Woodland girls I think have a good shot to make regionals. I think they've really turned a corner as a team, and they have a lot of options and athleticism to go around. So I think they have a really good shot. But as far as local girls go, the Nassau girls and stuff probably make state, but nothing like super competitive like some of the boys things we got.
Right.
But I think it'll be interesting, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, should be fun.
And we got tons of wrestling going on, so look for our coverage this weekend of the 1A and 3A sub-regionals, and we'll have more from regionals, and I'll be at Mac Classic both days. My favorite event of the year. And and then we'll hopefully be back next week, and we may be spotty with depending on where we're traveling to of how many podcasts we get out during the playoff season. But we will try to be back next week for episode 56. But if not, enjoy interview with Wayne Baker, and we'll see you soon.
All right, perfect. All right, I'm here with Castle Rock wrestler Wayne, state champion wrestler Wayne Baker. Won a title in the 116 last year and wrestling in the same class this year, correct?
No, I'm actually wrestling in 170.
Okay. When I was looking at it, I thought there was something weird, but I wasn't sure if that was me or...
Yeah, try to fit me in a good spot.
Okay.
Wrestling up a little bit.
How different? Is it different at all for you?
Yeah, I'm already kind of a light 160 pounder, and wrestling up at 70, I'm gonna be wrestling some kids that are 10, 12 pounds heavier than me.
Okay.
So
all right,
it's gonna be a difference. I've already lost some muscle, so.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so because I was weighing like 65 before season, so I'm gonna be wrestling some big guys, strong.
Okay. Nice. Okay. You win a state title, and it's like going into the next year. I know for some folks, it's like, all right, I got to set I accomplished goal one, the top goal, but is there a point where you start to think, okay, I need a bigger goal than state?
Sort of in a way. To me, it was kind of just like getting there again. I did the most work that I've ever done in 1 year from after I had won state. Actually, it wasn't before that; it was after that. I wanted to get there again, and I wanted to put in work. I did the most work I have from that summer and from there on to this point.
Okay. And what's the feeling like as a wrestler winning the state title? I mean, it's a gauntlet already.
Yeah.
It's a tough sport.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure for everyone it's amazing, but for me it was something else. I actually have something that my mom framed for me for last Christmas. It was a drawing that I drew when I was a really little kid, and it was of me up on the top of the state podium.
Okay.
And she got it framed for me. I drew it when I was really little, and it's written on the bottom of the desk at our house and stuff.
Kidding.
I want to be a state champ. The handwriting's all bad. It's been my dream for a long time.
How old were you when you drew that?
I had to have been in 5th, 6th grade. I had to.
Okay.
I was small.
Okay. So when did you start wrestling?
I actually started wrestling in 1st grade, but
okay.
For then I actually wanted to quit after my first year. I didn't win a single match, and I hated it. I cried. I was so nervous, and my parents said, just stick with it. You'll like it.
Right.
So I'm glad I listened to them.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
No, that's tough. Losing that much.
Yeah, in such a physical sport, when you lose that much, you're just like, man.
Yeah. Do you have any of those matches where you look over at the scores table and see a score that you think you're winning, but it wasn't actually that way?
Yeah, not so much later in my career, like in the few last years of high school, but definitely in middle school, my freshman year, I'm like, okay, I got this. I just gotta kind of relax a little bit, and then the coach would be like, go, and I'm like, oh. So it gets confusing sometimes, but not so much anymore.
Okay, all right. And this year, has it been? People know your name this year. I mean, I think people kind of knew of you in this area last year, but you win a state title. People know your name from everywhere.
Yeah.
Is there pressure? Like you said, you want to repeat. Is there an added pressure in that at all?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, up until coming up and stuff, people always go like, "Oh, you have so much potential, this and that." And you're like, "Awesome!" So I mean, there's not really expectations that you have where you can let them down. You're just, you're on the up. But I'm here my senior year. I already accomplished something like that, and people are like, "Oh, the second time this year," and I gotta try to live up to that. And people that I've seen before at tournaments, other kids in high school that I used to look up to, I'm like, wow, they're such a good wrestler. They're coming up to me and they're like, hey, I heard you won last year, and I'm just like, a little starstruck. So it's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, it is nervous though.
Okay. Matt Classic, when we filmed earlier the first segment of this with Josh, and he was talking about it. I mean, Matt Classic is something he loves, and he's just there. He's not competing.
Yeah.
So I mean, what's the energy like there? I mean, wrestling is different than any other sport, just in that it's one-on-one. It's it's technique, and I know Coach wouldn't let anybody think otherwise.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of brute force too.
Yeah. It's kind of the animal instincts, and it's a very physical sport. It's a lot of technique, but it's a mental game. You come out there and you get in someone's head, you snap them down a little bit, get on their head, and they get out of their element a little bit.
Right.
But the energy of the Matt Classic is crazy, because I mean, no matter how many people are there to watch you specifically, you're down there on the mat and you look up and you just see all the way around you just crowds of people, and they're just cheering and doing. It feels like everyone's watching you, right. And especially when it's a one-on-one sport like that, it's just like you can't, after the match, you can't make excuses. You can't be like, oh, if you would have done this better on a team sport or something like that. It's you get out of it what you put in. So
okay. How much? What's the difference in level of competition going from sub-districts to state?
It's a lot different. A lot of the schools that have really good competition, we don't have around here. We don't get to wrestle them during the normal season, and especially for me and other pretty higher level wrestlers like that, a lot of them are we don't get to see during the season. So going from here and then going to state, I really have to make sure I'm working hard during practice to keep up.
Okay. And I know that for some folks, there's a level of scouting. You know, you want to know, you know, if your opponent likes to shoot, if they're good at sprawling, if they're, you know, whatever. How much do you watch other matches while you're there, and how much do you kind of integrate what you see into that next opponent?
Okay, so usually as far as like stats go, usually if I know I'm going to wrestle someone and they're there with me or something like that, I'll watch them whenever they wrestle. But a lot of the time, I don't want to hear about stuff they've done in the past because that stuff gets in my head. I don't want. It doesn't change the fact that I have to wrestle them. I just want to go out there and wrestle my match. I don't want to have to wrestle different because I know stuff about them. You know, I just watch their match, and if I go, okay, they're more of a physical person, they try to get in my head a little bit, snap down, stuff like that. I'll know to stay strong and stay away from him a little bit, get in on my stuff, get in on his head, stuff. But my dad helps me with that a lot. My dad likes scouting, and my dad likes looking people up and stuff.
Right. How sounds like is your dad pretty you and him pretty close?
Yeah. Our family's kind of always been like a baseball. He's like baseball, and my brother did baseball, and he was good at baseball and stuff. And then he kind of started getting more and more into wrestling as I got older, and I started doing better and better, and he got more invested. And now he just loves it. He's always telling me about stats and at this tournament far away how someone's doing that I've seen before or something like that. And he loves it. We're close.
Nice. It's funny how parents you can make that change, and also, you know, there's definitely some parents that are more into the sport than
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I mean, the last thing I was wondering is you know, wind down the regular season. You got sub districts this weekend, and you know the playoff time is here. Do you have to change anything about your mindset, your routine, you know, the way you practice, anything like that? Does anything have to change?
Yeah, for me, I can notice a change because this time starts coming around. You know, practice, I take it serious and I work hard, but you know, earlier in the season, I'll find myself, you know, joking around with some teammates and doing stuff like that, and that's not bad at all. But it comes around to this time of the season, and I, without even really thinking about it, I kind of lock down, you know. And people after practice have been like, "You okay?" and stuff like that. I'm just like, "I'm sorry. I'm in the mindset, you know. I'm in the zone. I'm trying to milk everything out of it that I can, you know. Trying to do best I can. I got to get in that mindset. This is it."
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, hey, we're here, and you know, couple weeks left on the year.
Yeah.
On the season, I should say.
Yeah.
You know, baseball's still there, so. Well, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank
It's been
you.
a great interview. Not awkward at all.
No, I tried.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks for watching.